Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's program. My name is Mihaleen Butler. I'm a member of the Red Ant Collective, a indigenous, feminist, socialist oriented collective in the Southwest of the United States, primarily based in New Mexico and Arizona areas, Tiwa territories, and Dene and Navajo territories. Tonight we're gathered together to remember the 50th anniversary of two major moments in history that sort of overcome space and time through solidarity and through, as we call it, shared resilience, shared repression, and shared resistance. Yesterday, January 29th, was the 50th anniversary of the Albuquerque Police Department murdering two members of the Black Beret organization out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Tiwa territories. And today, January 30th, marks the 50th anniversary of the British Army murdering civil rights activists in Northern Ireland in Derry. So we wanted to pull together an event with La Raza Unida and Red Ant Collective and other members of the community. We'll hear some music from Eileen. We'll hear some commentary from our comrade Jerome Chavez. And then we'll hear stories and personal reflections from our comrades Richard Moore, as well as Enrique Cardiel with La Raza Unida. So we have a YouTube for all those on YouTube. Hello. Feel free to post in the chat any questions that come up. We'll have a question and answer period for as long as we get questions and as long as we feel like answering them, as well as feel free to watch live on the Red Ant Collective Facebook page for all those who are watching live. Thank you for joining us. So the program is that we're going to start off with a song by Eileen, and then we're going to watch. Oh, okay. And then we're going to watch a 10-minute short footage of from Bloody Sunday in Ireland. Our comrades in Lasser Yard and other comrades in other organizations send greetings. Of course, they were too busy to join us today as they were all out in the streets in Ireland today commemorating. So unfortunately, nobody will join us, but we are going to show actual footage from the events of Bloody Sunday in Ireland, and then we're going to move into hearing from our comrades about the Black Berets. So with that, welcome Eileen Shaughnessy for a song to welcome us and open up the event.
Thanks, Mihaleen. Hello, everyone. My name is Eileen O'Shaughnessy, and I'm located here on Tiwa lands in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the first song I'm going to sing this evening is called Oro Shedabaha Wolya, and it's in Irish Gaelic, and it references my ancestor, actually, Grace O'Malley. Her Gaelic name is Granuel, and the lyrics talk about defending Ireland and welcoming warriors home. And Granuel was a famous Irish pirate queen. So that's what this song is about. Thanks to everybody who put this event together and who's listening. Oro Shedaba Wolya, Oro Shedaba Wolya, Oro Shedaba Wolya. Anishan here not tauri. Shadua hapak ben lewer, de quack to a ner griffin, to quack ner shak ner spani. A tuta lashnan gali. Olo shirabaha will ya, olo shirabaha will ya, olo shirabaha will ya. Anishtan hina tauri. Tagran you elek chakar solhi, ogi hei, margarden berer fakner spani. The squilta lashnan wali. Olo shirabaha will ya, olo shirabaha will ya, olo shirabaha will ya. Anishner hafnan tauri. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Eileen. That was very beautiful and very moving. Very much appreciate you being here with us to open up this event. So we're just going to watch a 10-minute short. It's about 10 minutes short. Just the footage from the anti-internment march in Derry in 1972. A content and trigger warning. There is obviously violence shown, and if that makes you feel uncomfortable or something that you can't watch, you can always mute and or turn off the program for the next 10 minutes. Right, the British instituted, after 800 years of occupation, they instituted internment in Northern Ireland to basically defeat the civil rights movement that had sprung up to demand civil rights in the occupied North counties. Rights such as housing, access to employment, right, political rights, election rights, those sorts of things. And so they were marching in Derry against also the policy of internment, which was a policy of basically just mass kidnapping Irish people, particularly Irish men who may or may not have been involved in any sort of organization. And so they called for a march in Derry to protest against the internment and to protest for civil rights. And the Northern Ireland Civil Rights Association, right, was very instrumental in leading this movement. And they were also, right, very, very much so modeled on the civil rights movement of the southern part of the United States, of the civil rights movement in the United States, including adopting many of the songs, many of the strategies, and also talking to and connecting up with many of the organizers and African diaspora folks here in the United States. So we're just going to watch this clip for 10 minutes. And it's, again, like I said, it's just straight footage of the events of the day with no commentary.
Hey, don't walk out there with that. Let lie there. Hey, stay there. Hey.
So again, that was just the footage from events of the day, very harrowing and dark. But I also wanted to just really quickly, have a moment of silence. I'm gonna pull up a picture of the martyrs from that day, and the names and the pictures of those who were killed. Just real quick, for about 30 seconds, just have a moment of silence to take it all in. So this is or the last photo where it says there's no British justice. This was painted in free Derry just this past week or so, and this past month. We must remember that, right, there have never been any British soldiers, any members of the British military or of the political elites or political class who have faced any time or charges where they have been convicted of any of the murders of the violence that they have done. So it's important for us to uphold and continue to fight for justice for the families of the victims of Bloody Sunday. And with that, I'm now going to turn it over to my good comrade, Jerome Chavez.
Thank you, Micheline. So we are hosting a joint commemoration today for the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday in Ireland and of the assassinations of two activists with the Black Beret organization, Chicano militant organization in New Mexico. Their names are Rito Canales and James Antonio Cordova, which Richard Moore will be talking more about after this. Now, the fact that these two tragic incidences happened at almost the same time is not a coincidence, nor should it be. This period of time, there were movements for justice in nearly every corner of the world. And also, these movements were not in isolation. They had many collaborations nationally and internationally. The Irish struggle is known to be very internationalist. They, just looking at their murals, they have pictures of nearly every movement around the world, including in Mexico. And as was the Chicano movement, they had collaborations with many movements inside the United States, as well as internationally with Mexico. So that's something we should remember too. And for Irish and Mexicans, we have the example of the San Patricios. They were Irish immigrant soldiers who forced to fight in the U.S.-Mexican War, which took over this territory, and they realized the wrong of that, and they switched sides and fought for Mexico. And there are several other examples that we could bring up too. So in this remembrance, let's not only remember our comrades who have fallen and lost their lives in these struggles, but also let's remember those struggles themselves and continue them. So I want to bring up Richard Moore. He was a leader of the Black Beret organization, also called the Las Gorras Negras, in New Mexico in 1969 through 1973. And also, along with that, Richard has had pretty much a lifetime of work on social justice. And he's known overall as a main leader of the environmental justice movement in the United States. And he's helped found many organizations. Currently, he helps run the Los Jardines Institute that operates out of the South Valley in Albuquerque, and they do work throughout New Mexico. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Richard Moore.
Good, thank you, Jerome. I just have to think just for a moment because actually seeing the documentary that we've just seen brings back an incredible amount of thought and history of the struggle and struggles that we've all been a part of. As Jerome has mentioned, my name is Richard Moore. I'm also co-coordinator of Los Jardines Institute, the Gardens Institute, which is based in Albuquerque, and I'm calling in from northeastern New Mexico, and from Tiwa territory. I just wanted to just reflect for a minute around the assassination of Rito Canales and Antonio Cordova. It's important, I think, for us to understand, and I'll move through this very, very quickly, but New Mexico has an incredible long history of struggle, hundreds upon hundreds of years of struggle. And me, then, as a younger person, and reflecting for a second, reminds me that before Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, Dr. King called for a national mobilization on Washington, D.C. And that moment in that history is referred to as the Poor People's Campaign. I say that leading up to the assassination of our two brothers in the Black Berets, when many of us came back from Washington, and there was a group of women and men elders that said, "Young sisters and brothers, we're inviting you to come to northern New Mexico to spend several days with them." And we worked in the potato fields, and as many that are listening in know, that as we work in the fields and so on, we've got work to do, but we also share, get to know each other a little bit deeper. And so after a couple of days in northern New Mexico, and each evening we would sit together and in a bonfire in many cases, and talk about history, the history of New Mexico, but also the history of movements throughout not only New Mexico, but throughout the country and throughout the world. And 2.5 days later, as we were singing together and celebrating together and laughing together and crying together, and the elders left us with three things to keep in mind. One of those is to always remember where we come from. Secondly, to always remember whose shoulders we stand on. And third is to always give back to others what's been given to us. And moving along very, very quickly, as we engaged and still engage with many of our elders, that's the life that not only Rito and Antonio, but founding members and members of New Mexico's Black Berets. We developed a 12-point program of the Black Berets, and then our themes and our motto was to serve, educate, and defend. And so for the Black Beret organization and the constant interaction between our community members, we reached out to many of those communities and said, we're going to begin to develop a youth organization. And what issues do you all think that we should be concentrating on? So just an example of the service. Some talked about the lack of healthcare, the lack of true history, and history that was being presented or not being presented in our educational institutions. And so the Black Berets then began the first breakfast program for youngsters, and we served our young people in concert with constant contact with those community residents. They provided food, you name it, and the community members participated in. The other thing that we did, I'm only going to give two more examples, was we set up during that time what was referred to as cultural schools. And so then our elders, our youth, our adults, and our children came together, and we talked about, sang about, did poetry about, did acting about, theatros, and so on, in regards to much of that history. That was a part of to serve. And then at the same time, to educate, as we continue in our struggles on a day-to-day basis, continue to educate ourselves and to learn from others, both in rural communities and in urban cities throughout the state of New Mexico. And then to defend, we were asked, because of the political repression that was taking place by many of the police forces in New Mexico, we were asked to set up, and it was referred to as the Black Beret Community Patrol. And our community members would have did make it clear that they were asking, in particular, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, and also the Albuquerque Police Department, that the Black Berets, in concert with our community members, will continue to operate in self-defense, and at the same time would be called into the communities many times when there was issues. So moving along, and part of the reason why I was saying that is because we need to understand, with the assassination of Rito Canales and Antonio Cordova, that the Black Beret organization had incredible support from communities all over the city of Albuquerque. Now, moving to the assassination, there was a squad that was developed within the Sheriff's Department, within the State Police, and within the Albuquerque Police Department, referred to as the Metro Squad. And one of the primary pieces of work of the Metro Squad was to do, on their part, whatever was possible to disrupt activities that were being programs and other pieces of work that were being done by many political activists, not only the Black Berets, but many other political activists. I say that because every day is another day. And based upon that, what we've seen in the documentary and many of those additional struggles that many of us are involved in, that we were asked to New Mexicoize our youth organization. And that's why we referred to ourselves as New Mexico's Black Berets. And then along with that then comes, that leads us to the assassination. But what we need to be clear of is that it was an assassination. And because of the support that the community, as part of the Black Berets, then this became a very challenging situation for the city, for the state, and so on. And so they decided that the best way of handling it was the assassination of two of our members. Now, I do have to say that there's others in New Mexico's Black Berets that were also brutalized, beaten in many cases. Our homes were blown up. Our vehicles were blown up, and the combinations of all of that was not only happening in Albuquerque, but was happening throughout the state, throughout the country, and throughout the world. So where are we at today? And I want to close by saying that, and I want to repeat the initial comments that I made. One, many times people ask us why we named ourselves the Black Berets. Many of our members came out of various organizations, Chicano youth associations throughout the state, came out of the Brown Berets, came out of UMAS, the United Mexican American Students. And so that engagement of that work and the unification of that work was very, very crucial to moving forward a state agenda. And just going back as I kind of close this out and truly do thank you to the sponsors of this activity. And why did we call ourselves the Black Berets? Because in our discussions, we said we're going to name our organization in honor of Ernesto Che Guevara and the internationalism that Che expressed and the support that the Cuban Revolution has given us for many, many years. So I want to leave it there. I want to pass it on. And I want to just, as I say, end by saying again, sisters and brothers, let's never forget where we come from. Let's always remember those that have given up their lives to make it possible for us to even be in this activity this evening. And then finally, let's give back to others what's been given to us. So I want to close with that. It's a short version of a much longer story, but the struggle continues. We support our sisters and brothers not only in Ireland, but throughout this world. So thank you very much, Jerome, for the invitation, and I will pass it on.
Thank you very much for that, Richard. I just also want to add that for their particular roles, Rito Canales, he was a former convict and became a prison activist through the Black Berets. And if you're familiar with New Mexico history, in 1980 there was one of the largest prison riots in American history that happened there, and the conditions the conditions there during that time is what led up to it. And Antonio Cordova was a journalist. He was a reporter with El Grito del Norte, a very important newspaper in the Chicano movement, run by the late Elizabeth Martinez, among others. And he also helped the Black Berets with their own newspaper too. And so right now, I want to show a video. This is a corrido that was done in their memory. It was originally written by Roberto Martinez. He was a singer here in New Mexico, and this is performed by the band here in Albuquerque, Los Sotros. Now, they've been playing social justice and traditional music with each other since the 1980s. They describe themselves and their genre as fiery social justice music from across the Americas, and they're gonna perform the ballad of Cordova and Canales. So we'll observe that here.
Great. Thank you very much, Jerome. Long live the life of Rito Canales and Antonio Cordova. Hasta la victoria siempre. Venceremos.
Thank you very much, Richard. And I just want to also mention the members of Los Otros. They are Enrique Cardial, Teresa Guevara, Beltran, Ricardo Magallanes, Guillen, Dare Obenchain, and Ruth Warner. And in this recording, written by Roberto Martinez, they were blessed to have Karen Cathy sing along with us. And Juan Cardial was the one filming them. And and let's not forget the importance of our cultural workers in this struggle too. Thank you to Eileen also. And for Los Otros, book them for your next protest or party, and always support your local cultural workers. And with that, I want to introduce Enrique Cardial. He helped found the New Mexico. Well, I think it's the current. He helped found the current chapter of La Raza Unida here in New Mexico over 25 years ago, and he's been a long time organizer within Albuquerque. And many years ago, he had a chance to meet Bernadette Devlin, and he's going to talk a little bit about that. So go ahead, Enrique.
I think Mijalin is going to say something first.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment because, yeah, I mean, this speaks to the sort of internationalism, of course, that Richard was getting at the heart of, which I think is actually one of the most important reasons why we should remember the Black Beret organization and the work that they did. Um, yeah, in 1974, just 2 years after Bloody Sunday, Bernadette Devlin went on a speaking tour, and one of the places that she spoke at was the University of New Mexico, Albuquerque. Um, at the same time as that was happening, um, there was repression against indigenous Dene comrades here in Gallup, New Mexico, and the reservation. And there were people in Albuquerque that also remember meeting Bernadette when she spoke in Albuquerque at that time. And there was a lot of movement in that year in 1974 as well. And then, of course, when I went to Albuquerque to live for the first time in my life, one of many times, I met Enrique and Karen and learned that in 1994, 20 years after her first trip, Bernadette came back and spoke. And I'm so happy to hear that Enrique is going to tell the story of his activism and the story of meeting Bernadette and the story of the shared resilience of our movement. So thank you so much for being with us, Enrique.
Well, thank you for having me on. I can't tell if my camera is working, but I really don't have a long story, really. I think Karen probably can say more. She spent some time actually talking with Bernadette. But there was an Irish Solidarity organizing committee, and I don't remember exactly the name they used. But they were able to bring Bernadette in 1994, and so we worked to try to get as many Raza folks to attend as possible. We felt it was important to continue, doing international solidarity. We knew that was important. It's always been important. And so we attended. We had a good sized turnout, and Bernadette told us about how things were going. And so it was a great presentation. I think it was about an hour long, or maybe an hour and a half. And to just learning a lot of details and how the struggle had changed over the years and what things were still the same. And I think that the most important thing was really just us getting to that point of solidarity. And so we went to somebody's house afterwards. I'm trying to remember whose house it was. And we just spent hours talking about the similarities of our struggles. And it was great. Bernadette challenged us on, how are we fighting colonialism? What are we doing to take on colonialism? What is the political action we're taking? What is the direct action we're taking? And so we just had this long conversation and just discussed at length. A lot of us were young organizers, so we spoke the best we could to our knowledge of our history at that time, the knowledge of the history of movements at the time. The more I speak with elders, the more I learn. I'm still learning things today about these events. And so really, she was just challenging us to continue to fight against colonialism, and to never surrender. And I think that was such a good and inspiring commentary. And it led us to spend some time studying more in depth the movement in Ireland, and trying to learn from that. And, it did impact our thought and our efforts at those times. So I think it was really something that touched the membership at the time. And I think we may not speak of it on a regular basis, but I think really that it continues to influence and impact us to this day. For those of us that were members then that are still members now, it doesn't seem like that long ago, and yet we know it was. And so we just continue to stand in solidarity and do things with an internationalist perspective as often as we can and as deeply as we can. And, La Raza Unida is not a well-funded organization. It's not a organization that gets a lot of support from mainstream politics or mainstream, donations or anything like that. But we continue out of the passion in our heart for social justice, for decolonization, and for all people. And so that will always live with me. We only took one picture. There's a picture somewhere of Karen and Bernadette together. I think that's the only picture we have of that event. There wasn't a lot of cell phones then worth people taking pictures, so we had to live with what we got. And I think that's really all I have.
All right, thank you, Enrique. And so I guess right now we're going to go to some question and answers from the audience. I think we got one question. And, for anyone viewing, if you have any questions or comments, please let us know. So, and I'll let you take it on, Micheline.
Okay, so Lewis Head, great to see that you're watching, comrade. Happy belated birthday and Happy New Year as well to you. So Lewis asks, my question is, what were the concrete impacts of the assassinations of Rito and Antonio on both movement organizations and activists, and also on the level of community support for their efforts? Obviously, I'm going to see if you want to answer this first, Richard.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Louis, for the question, and I think it was a question and a comment. But I was trying to keep my comments, and I do get a bit emotional because although Rito and Antonio were assassinated on January 29th in 1972, that the life of both Rito and Antonio and the work that they were doing before they joined the Black Berets, and the work that we all do as we continue standing on the shoulders of our sisters and brothers. I think one, as I say, and again, I'm going to keep it very brief, but we would have to look at the many, many years, as I said, of struggle over land, resources, education, healthcare, you name it, childcare, and the various issues that many organizations were working on during that time. And so after the assassination of Rito and Antonio, people know that there was demonstrations that took place in Albuquerque, but also took place throughout the state of New Mexico. And the support from our sisters and brothers from the American Indian movement, from the Black Liberation movement, from the Asian Pacific Islander movement, and then other organizations that in the Southwest and beyond and internationally. I think a lesson learned for us is, as we say, the struggle continues. And we've seen the reflections of that, of activities and the coming together of organizations across the board to continue for the liberation of our people, not only here and as was said, the international work that was being done and is still being worked on in concert with our sisters and brothers throughout the world. And I just will say that I think one of the significant pieces is unification, and that many a times that we have to set our egos to the side and understand that movement building isn't necessarily about individuals, but community and movement building, and those intersections are connected to the people that make up the movements that many of us are a part of. And I think we saw that reflection. We saw it in northern New Mexico before January 29th of 72, in southern New Mexico and central New Mexico, and the bonds that continued to be built, but many of those bonds that are still being established during this time period and this moment of history. So I think those intersections are important, although all of us can't do everything. But can we just come together sometime and support each other around very important issues to our communities? So I'll kind of leave it there. I know I didn't dive deeper into it, and many that are listening to this know that in many cases for Richard, there's no such thing as a short story. And so based upon that, I'm gonna end on the comment of saying, can we, sisters and brothers, can we put our issues, not necessarily the issues, since the issues intersect with all the work that many of us are doing, but can we, during this dark moment of history, can we move forward and sit at the table and discuss amongst ourselves sometimes what we consider are issues that we can't come together around because we might just surprise ourselves. So I'll leave it there. I think we've got more in common than what separates us. And if it's truly about our people and the love for our people, then let's put those individual issues many times to the side and bring our members of our organizations together to unify not only in New Mexico and to continue to work on the issues that many of us are working on. So thank you very much, Louis.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Richard. I just wanted to follow up that comment real quickly, because it reminds me of right, like the importance for me, at least, or in my mind, the importance of commemorating. Because I don't know, many people might be asking or wondering, like, why are we even commemorating them? What was there to commemorate? Like, is there is there a legacy that continues from the movement? Like, these are questions that people have, and I think that, right, obviously your presentation and the comments by Jerome and Enrique tell us yes. And so I think that it's commemorations like these where we recognize that real history has happened and that we're living out the legacy of that history. For me, right, in my mind, we should have some sort of, obviously in Derry and occupied Ireland, right, they would have statues or they would have plaques commemorating our heroes. And me and Jerome obviously talk about it all the time, about how we should have plaques and statues of our comrades and our martyrs in Albuquerque. Because that, right, these two comrades in the Black Berets, for me, represent the best of the historical legacy of struggle and resistance in New Mexico and in Albuquerque for me. So that's what I wanted to express. Is I think that it should be for us and for all who are watching and listening. And I know that I speak for at least Red Ant Collective, that we have the utmost respect for those comrades, and we have the utmost respect for this commemoration and for all of us gathering together to be here together to commemorate these and to hopefully continue to build struggle. Sorry, there's another question, obviously. Given Las Gordas Negras' experience with the police and sheriff, the squad, the Metro squad, what advice do you have for those working now to defund the police and defend our communities?
I really kind of wanted to get others engaged in this discussion. But what I will say as I pass it on is that and we used to do this all the time, and we continue to do it in Los Jardines Institute. I think that we have to be extremely cautious if our slogans or if our realities are, for example, defund the police and other primary issues that come. I think many times that we allow ourselves to confuse others by not engaging with those others. And so what I mean by that, we know what's happening right now within the Albuquerque Police Department, within the Sheriff's Department, within the State Police, here in Albuquerque and throughout New Mexico. And if we are not cautious, we confuse our people. And so that engagement of that is extremely, extremely crucial. I want to kind of leave it there because I really want to kind of turn it over to some of the other folk to respond at the same time.
Well, I want to add, well, for myself, I'm a graduate student in the Chicano Studies Department at the University of New Mexico, and I'm currently doing research on the Chicano movement during this time, focused on the Black Berets. And one thing to know about the assassinations of Cordova and Canales is that they were led there by a man, Tim Chapa. And it was revealed later on that he was an informant with the state police, and he was ordered to bring him there specifically to do what happened there. Now the families had some lawsuits that after this happened, and of course the lawsuits didn't go anywhere. But like I think in 2001, he mainly cleared his conscience and revealed Tim Chapa revealed what his role was. So I think just shows the role of state repression against our movements of this time, and it didn't end there. It's still going on. And as we all know, there was several uprisings against police violence that happened a couple years ago, and they went on before that too, and we still have to deal with police violence. And in Albuquerque itself, as many they are under Justice Department monitoring because of their violence. Just think about that. We know that it's hard to get police violence to bring attention to, but Albuquerque is so bad that the feds had to step in. And as we see here, they have a long history of that. And also, last year we had another 50th anniversary of the Roosevelt Park uprising, which was caused by police violence too. And Richard and Joaquin Lujan, another Black Beret, spoke at that also, along with other community members. But I think it's one thing we could do is just know this history, because as Richard mentioned before, this this wasn't the first times that these things happen. You know, we have a long history, and even going back to that, and to have an awareness of that history is helpful to deal with these issues today.
Yes, and I think it's important to also, in learning from those things, is look at how do we do community defense in at this time, you know. And I think that you know, for some reasons, you know, people don't want to talk about that a lot, and it makes sense, right? You know, we don't necessarily share a lot of details, but there's, especially during the period where people were out in the streets in relationship to the murder of George Floyd, that a lot of community members began to think about different ways that we defend our communities. And I think it goes from everything from what people call cop watch to just making sure that folks have food, and now making sure that folks have access to tests and masks and all those things that keep them safe, right? That at the end of the day, we know that we can depend on each other, right? That our solidarity is practical and something that we do on a day-to-day basis. You know, protests in the street are important. They're there to make a point. They're more powerful when we can actually create some form of pressure or crisis on those who make decisions or those who have official power. But I think really looking at how we take care of each other and do that actively is important. That you know, it's not just, and I haven't seen it here, but it's not just, you know, what is our title or what organization do we belong to, but what are we doing with folks that we know? You know, I heard from a brother today, you know, that they became a lawyer in order to be able to respond to assassinations of people like Rito and Antonio. And I think that's important, right? That there's many ways we do these things. You know, part of the cultural work we do is to keep people's spirits up, because it's easy to get our spirits down. And so looking for those practical things, looking for how, again, like how do we grow food so we feed each other? All right. And I can probably go on that for a long time, so it'll be my turn to stop.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of as we move it on. I mean, even with the Black Berets, from where we were then, where we are now, and where we're going, even during that time period, there was a lot of activity that was going on campuses throughout the state of New Mexico, in communities throughout the state, rural communities, urban communities, and so on. But even with the Black Beret Community Patrol, we traveled and invited. There were students from the law school that many times while we were patrolling and asked to come into communities. There were students from the university, from the law school that were going there as they were kind of studying to become attorneys and so on. We had elected officials that said at the end of the day, in some cases, that what we were talking about and what we were seeing in experiences, that we were imagining things or making things up. And so we said, okay, then you get in the vehicles with us. And we had signs on the side of the vehicles, Black Beret Community Patrol. And so you go with us, and you be the news media and so on, travel with us for a little bit. So I think that's connected to where we are today. There's no reasons why, from my opinion, that we should be letting the media get away with what the media gets away with on many occasions. And so there's very, very vibrant pieces of work and history that come out of our communities. So I say pulling that together and just starting to sit down, but engage. The only people that can speak for us is, as we say, we speak for ourselves. and the community members should be speaking for themselves too. So it's leadership development, it's training, it's media training, it's a whole set of things. And then always at the end of the day, as we've always said as Black Berets, when people ask us, why do you do what you do? And our comment was, for the love of the people. So if it's about the love of the people, and if it's about the people, then the people should engage in the various projects and struggles that we're involved in from the bottom up. Thank you, John.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Richard, for sharing that and saying those things. I think for me, being someone who's been involved in some of the more recent protests and organizing in Albuquerque and in New Mexico, my advice is to study and study and study. And that includes listening to comrades who've been in the movement as long as Richard has, and getting to know them and learning from them and having conversations, hanging out with other elders in our movement in Albuquerque, from all the different movements and all the different organizations that have existed. Studying the Albuquerque Police Department and its role in repression since its founding, and the founding of Albuquerque as a settlement and as a border town. Studying the various methods that the Albuquerque Police Department has developed over the years to repress and target and kill people, whether it be unsheltered relatives or it be people on picket lines or in organizations, and studying the political economy of the police department and understanding the police budget, the different technologies they have access to, the actual real economic and racial interests of racial capital that they serve, and who's giving them the free rein and who has given them the free rein. And then also studying the successes of how our movements have been able to defend our communities, as Enrique was saying, and studying also how we defend ourselves and how the people organize amongst ourselves as comrades, as relatives, as friends, as people in community. And Enrique hit upon that, community defense. Oh, you think everybody should carry this or carry that? No, I think that everybody should have access to housing and education and employment and environmental justice and gender justice. They shouldn't, and other things like that. I think those are the highest forms of community defense. And I think that, learning about the very real ways in which we can love the people and serve the people, and supporting the projects that will actually help our people, are some of the most important things. So being strategic, learning, being open to history as it unfolds and history as it unfolded, and also just opening. The most important, I think, lesson for me in my years of organizing has been to open myself up to other comrades and to invite other comrades onto events like this so I can learn from them and to listen to people who have been involved in the movement and to learn from them. And I think that's again, it's about the education and the study and the understanding. I think the consciousness and the commitment are what's going to make change. Thank you, comrades. We're opening it up for one more question or other reflections or comments. Syra asked, how do people commemorate Bloody Sunday today, and does the truth of that day get taught in Ireland education? So every year, they have the Bloody Sunday Commemoration March in Derry, and then there's other events that happen around Ireland as well, in solidarity, and there are other events around the world. So the Facebook page for that is the Bloody Sunday March, and Yeah, so today they've been gathered, all weekend they've been gathering in various parts of Ireland and around the world to have marches and commemorations. Right, there's usually comrades and relatives from various struggles that the Irish have supported, from South Africa to Palestine to parts of Latin America, the Philippines, etc., and including here in the US, of course. Indigenous comrades and relatives have gone and traveled to Ireland, and Irish comrades have traveled here. So the truth of that day get taught in Ireland education. Well, probably not the events as we would like them to be taught as people who are in the movement, in the struggle. But I'm right. I mean, it's much in the same way that other events in our past may or may not have been taught. I mean, we don't learn about the assassination of our 2 Black Beret comrades in education, and even in Albuquerque oftentimes, the city where they were murdered. So it's very similar in that way, but I do expect that there is some sort of nod to the commemoration. Obviously, the Free State, because of the broad base of support that many people in Ireland, and the fondness and the nostalgia that many people in the whole entire Ireland, not just like the 26 county Free State known as Ireland, or the occupied northern counties, the Free State, the 26 county state, has to give a nod here and there to the commemoration and the events, and allow it to be celebrated in that way. That would be my answer to that question. Which also reminds me that, right, we know that our comrades in Palestine and our comrades in Cuba and our comrades in all the rest of the world, South Africa, etc., right, and all these various struggles, going through so much, having their own bloody Sundays and assassinations of comrades. 2 days ago was the birthday of Basil al-Araj, a young person who was committed to organizing in Palestine, who was committed to being an intellectual among the people, who quit his job as a pharmacist because of its collaboration with the Israeli economy, and then was heavily involved in trying to build struggle and solidarity and breaking down education for the people. His birthday was 2 days ago, but he was assassinated a couple of years back, and I just wanted to bring him up as someone that we uphold. The Palestinian movement, of all the movements right now, I think is one that we should hold in our hearts dearly on commemorations like this, and we want our Palestinian relatives and comrades to know that we stand with them in unconditional solidarity for the liberation of Palestine. I just think that needs to be said. So yeah, any closing remarks from any of our panelists or speakers before we hear one final song from Eileen?
I did. If I could, I got a text message, and someone that's listening in said, well, the Black Berets in this particular case decided to arm themselves for self-defense. And I want to be clear, I wasn't avoiding any of the history of New Mexico's Black Berets, but very clearly we did have a press conference to announce that the Black Berets were arming themselves for self-defense. We're not encouraging anyone at this point to do that. That was a very serious commitment on the part of not only the members of the Black Berets, but at the communities that many of us came from. So yes, we did. We did have a press conference and to announce that we were arming ourselves, and we were legally carrying arms within the law of the state of New Mexico. And so yes, we did arm ourselves.
Arms. You didn't have those arms.
I think, as closing, it's important to realize that, again, the connections with Ireland, connections with Hawaii, connections with Puerto Rico, Palestine, that La Raza Unida does what we can within our capacity to stand in solidarity with all of those movements, as well as all the movements here. And that it's important that we look for ways to be practical and serve. We can say we serve our communities as if we're somebody from outside of the community, but we are the part of the community so that we work to uplift each other and the folks who are our neighbors, the folks that we live with, the folks that we love, even the neighbors that may not appreciate us that much, but to make things safer, healthier for each other on the ground, as well as, ideologically moving towards creating the world that will serve all of us. And at this point, we're just trying to make sure the world sticks around so that we have a place to live. And I think that's important to recognize that, at the end of the day, it's about us helping each other. And I want to point out that La Raza Unida has, either through events at the end of January or for August 29th, often had events centered around remembering Rito and Antonio, that they've been with us and we've kept them in mind, as well as other martyrs and other people in the struggle.
So, well, going off the last question, I think that, and just with this presentation itself, just shows the need for ethnic studies in K-12, not only Chicano studies, but for all the other nationalities within the U.S. And I'm sure we need a lot more liberatory education all over. Just a lot of my professors who work toward that get a lot of students who say, I wish I knew this before. And so that's one struggle that needs to continue, and we need to continue all these struggles until victory. It was great to be on this panel with everyone, and so I guess, but yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much for joining us, relatives and comrades and friends. Thank you so much, Richard, for being with us to honor your friends. And Enrique, thank you so much for joining us as well. And Jerome, thank you for joining us as well in your reflection and your analysis.
Thank you, Micheline, too, for pretty much sparking this to be put on, and also your reflections too.
And Eileen, turn your camera on and we're going to put you on. The great news is that Eileen has requested to play 2 songs for us. So this is amazing news. And so without further ado, we're going to have Eileen perform 2 songs for us, and then we're going to wrap up.
Thank you so much, Micheline. And yeah, just want to echo the thanks to all the organizers and panelists, Richard, Jerome, Enrique. It was wonderful to be a part of this event, and kind of the international connections that are being made here. They're just so important for liberatory work, for education, for activism, all of it. Well, I wasn't sure what to play at the end, but all of the talk of Bernadette made me realize I needed to play a song that I wrote many years ago about Bernadette Devlin. And Enrique, I loved hearing that story. I did not know that she came to UNM, and I'm going to have to hear more about that because she's one of my heroines. And just want to dedicate this song to all the powerful women, femme, non-binary revolutionaries out there, of which there are many, and Bernadette's one of them. bombs of destruction blowing into Derry. You win, taking all that you could carry, and you came to the aid of every man, a woman and child there. Oh, Bernadette, you're one for the ages. Oh, Bernadette, your courage is contagious. And the people were screaming, there was blood in the streets. You leapt to your feet, you were the voice of the people, the voice of the people. Oh, Bernadette, you're one for the ages. Oh, Bernadette, your courage is contagious. Oh, Bernadette, you're one for the ages. Oh, Bernadette, your courage is contagious. So that's a song about Bernadette Devlin, who I also had the honor of meeting in 2007, I think. 2007? Yeah, somewhere around that time. And I spent some time in Northern Ireland, in occupied Northern Ireland, studying the Troubles, and I was just so inspired to meet her. And one of my favorite stories about her, just to quickly say, is that after Bloody Sunday happened, she famously punched Reginald Malding in the face, who was the Home Secretary at the time, on the floor of the House of Commons when he called the shootings justified. You got to watch out for powerful Irish women, I'll tell you that. Okay, I just wanted to end with one more song, thank you for humoring me here. We're going a little over time. But this last song, I wanted to end on a note of revolutionary love. And this is a song that I wrote for my partner, Hasmeen. And it has a line of Irish Gaelic in it. And the line is, Mayasavart la nahashi tena, which means, you are the place where I stand on the day when my feet are sore. And it's a phrase that basically means trust. It's a long Irish way of saying to trust. So I offer this to all of you out there, wherever you are, hoping that you get some place to rest, if that's what you're needing. When I die, honey, don't you cry. I'll be ready for it. 'Cause the love you've given me has shown me just what paradise is. They say wild mountain time. Well, I've known love, I've had love, but none like this before. You are the place where I stand on the day when my feet are sore. You are the place where I stand on the day when my feet are sore. Say wild mountain time. Wild mountain time. Feet on the ground and head in the stars with you. Maya sevar lana hashitena. Maya our soul. You are the place where I stand on the day when my feet are sore. You said, wild mountain tide. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Eileen, for sharing your music with us today and for being with us. So thank you everyone for joining us for the program today. Wherever you are, I send my firmest, warmest hugs and fierce revolutionary red salutes. Again, my name is Mihaline, and I'm with the Red Ant Collective. Right, you can learn more about us by checking out our Facebook page or following us on Instagram at Red Ant Collective. And also, right, La Raza Unida, thank you so much for co-sponsoring this event with us. And for more information, you can check out their Facebook page, Bernalillo County La Raza Unida, and following and liking and sharing their content. And I'm sure you will find contact information for them on their Facebook page as well. Or you'll see them around because they're a very prominent community organization in Albuquerque. And yeah, I guess my final comment is I hope that people watching this from home or wherever you are, that you remain committed to the struggle, that you remain committed to justice for all of our comrades who have been murdered, and that you be more so committed to building up solidarity in our communities and building up struggle. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the streets sometime soon, or we'll see you at the next event. Thank you, comrades.